Has your coolant level suddenly dropped, or you've noticed the engine or transmission oil has started to take on kind of a milky color, or you've noticed some coolant or oil dripping from the base of your water pump, odds are the seals that are inside have gone bad and it's time to replace them. So today we're going to show you how to replace the water pump seals and rebuild it. The water pump is what circulates the coolant inside of your engine so that your bike can maintain an optimum operating temperature. Now inside of the water pump here, we've got two seals that separate the engine oil from the coolant. Now after a period of time, these do go bad and will wear out. And as we stated earlier, a way that you can tell this is if the coolant level has suddenly dropped on your machine or that your engine oil is starting to take on somewhat of a milky color. Now another way that you can tell if the seals have gone bad is at the bottom of the water pump there's what's called a weep hole. And from this weep hole, if your seals have gone bad, you will either leak engine coolant or engine oil. So today we'll be working on a 2002 Yamaha YZ250 two-stroke. Now the process that we're going to show you here today can be applied to most motorcycles and ATVs that are liquid cooled. To do this job, we're just going to need a few basic hand tools. Now, depending on which bike you're working on, the tools may vary. Then you'll need some rubber gloves, some safety glasses, rags, as well as some contact cleaner and a drain pan. Then we've got some replacement gaskets for the engine's case cover as well as the clutch cover. Then we've got some replacement washers for the water pump as well as the drain plug. Then we've got our water pump rebuild kit from Tusk, which is going to come with the water pump cover gasket, replacement bearing, and the two seals. You'll also want to have some grease, some replacement engine oil, coolant, and depending on your machine, you may or may not need a blind bearing puller. And as always, before doing any work on your machine, always be sure to reference your service manual for proper procedures, safety information, and torque specs. To begin, start the machine and get the engine oil warm. Next, you can remove the skid plate if you have one. After the engine has been warmed up and your skid plate removed, you'll want to place the motorcycle on a suitable working stand, or if you have one, you can leave it on the side stand. Then drain the engine oil, drain the engine coolant. After having removed the water pump drain bolt, be sure to crack the radiator cap to relieve the system of all the coolant. Now, depending on the bike that you're working on, you may or may not have to remove the exhaust. In this case, we need to remove the header so we can gain access to the power valve cover. Then once the engine and exhaust has had a chance to cool off, you can remove the silencer and the head pipe. Then remove the kickstarter, followed by the foot brake. Remove the power valve cover. Remove the radiator hose from the water pump cover. Then you can remove the clutch cover. Now you don't have to remove the clutch cover, but it's nice because it allows for you to grab the side case like this when it comes to removal and just makes for ease of removing the side case cover. Remove the water pump cover. Be aware of these dowel pins. Make sure that you don't lose them. Now, because we're working on a two-stroke, in order to remove the engine case cover, we do need to remove the power valve lever arm. And to do that on this particular bike, we're going to need to take a pin of a specific diameter and set it into this hole right here. And this is going to help hold the lever in a fixed position while we remove the fastener. That way we don't damage it. Now you can use just about anything that will fit inside of the hole. You can use an Allen key or a punch. Then remove the fasteners that retain the case cover to the engine. With all the case cover fasteners removed, we can now remove the case cover. When pulling off the case cover, be sure to pull it off so that it's nice and square when you remove it from the engine. After you've removed it, be sure to look for your dowels and make sure that you don't lose them. With the case cover removed from the engine, we can take it over to the bench, and our first step will be to remove the water pump impeller. To remove the water pump impeller from its shaft, for this bike, we'll be using a 10mm open-ended wrench, and we'll locate the flat spot that's on our shaft here so that we can hold it in a fixed position while we use a 12mm socket to remove the impeller from the shaft. Now keep in mind that some machines may have a washer that sits behind the impeller, so just make sure to keep track of it. Next, we can flip this around. You can grab onto the water pump shaft, remove it. We can flip our case cover back around to the front side. To remove the seal, for this we're going to be using a flathead screwdriver that's very long. However, you can use a variety of other tools that have quite a bit more length to it so that you can get some leverage. Now, when we go to pry the seal out, we're going to want to protect this sealing surface on the water pump body. So we're going to place a rag here so that we don't damage it. We're going to insert our screwdriver, and before we begin to pry it out, we need to make sure that the ends of our screwdriver does not damage the inner diameter of the water pump body here. It should come out relatively easy. Now when removing these, be sure to take note of the direction and orientation of the seal. Next, we need to remove the seal and the bearing that sits behind it. Now you can use a socket to drive it out from this side, or a blind bearing puller that you would insert from the other side and slide hammer out. Now we're going to be driving it through to the other side, but before we do that, we want to make sure the case cover is sitting flush. Now as you can see, it's got a high center point right here, which is our power valve gear. So before we drive this out, we need to remove this. Now our engine cover is sitting nice, flat, and flush. We can take our socket and hammer and begin to drive out the seal and the bearing. Now before you remove this assembly, be sure that you understand and note the direction of the seal. Now we can clean the gasket mating surfaces on all of our parts, as well as clean the inner and outer diameter of where our bearing and seals will sit. And while we're right here, we need to give our shaft, our water pump drive shaft, a good inspection. After a period of time and prolonged use on the water pump drive shaft, it may begin to develop some circular grooves. And if that is the case with yours and they're excessively deep, you may want to look into replacing the water pump drive shaft itself before you install the new seals. Be sure to clean the water pump drive shaft with some Scotch-Brite, especially where the lips of the seals will ride. When cleaning the gasket surface, be sure to take and place a rag or something suitable to protect the components inside from any debris. With the case cover nice and clean, we can now install our seals and bearing. Now we're going to start with the smaller of the two seals. The smaller one will be installed on the inside of the case cover. There are two sides to the seal. The side that has the lettering and stamps on it is going to be facing outwards towards the outside of the engine's case. We're going to lube this up with some grease. We're going to take a socket that's about the same size diameter, and we're going to drive it into place. Once you've driven the seal into place, flip the case cover over and inspect the seal to make sure that it is fully seated. Next, we can take the water pump bearing. We're going to drive it into place using a socket that is the same diameter as the outside diameter of our bearing. We're going to set it into place. Then as you begin to drive it, take your time and make sure to keep it square as you drive it into place. When the bearing is fully seated into its housing, as you strike the socket with the hammer, the sound that it makes, the pitch will change, letting you know that the bearing is fully seated. Now we can flip the engine case over. We can now drive the other seal. Now, again, this is directional. You want to have the stamps and lettering facing in towards the engine. Lube it up with some grease. Set it into place, get it started with your fingers. We'll take a socket that's the same diameter, we'll tap it into place. Check to make sure that the seal is fully seated, make sure that it is flush with the outer diameter. Once the seals have been driven, take some grease. We're going to set it inside on the inner diameter of the lip and use it kind of liberally and make sure that it gets worked in there to both seals. Clean off the excess grease on the seal. Then we can lubricate the water pump drive shaft with some grease as well, where the oil seals will reside. Then we can flip the case over. Then as we insert this into the bearing, we're going to use a twisting motion until it seats. Clean off the excess grease from the shaft as it was pushed through to the other side. Once the grease has been removed, we're going to take our impeller washer, place it onto the shaft, start to thread the impeller into place. For this bike, we'll torque the water pump impeller to 10 foot-pounds. Then we can reinstall the power valve gear assembly. Now we're ready to install the case cover. So the first thing we're going to do is install the dowels. Next we can install the gasket. And before I install the gasket, I like to take just a couple dabs of grease. I'm going to place it onto the surface where the gasket is going to sit. And once I mount up the gasket, this is just going to help ensure that it stays in place when I mount the case cover. When placing the case cover gasket, be sure to align it on the dowels. When reinstalling the case cover onto the engine, be sure that you take your time when it comes to lining up these gears here with the primary gear. When you go to mount this, if it doesn't set just correctly, don't force it. You run the risk of breaking this part of the case. So pull it back off, adjust your gears, and take your time to make sure that you get it set flush. Insert the case cover bolts, and for this bike, we're going to torque them to 7.2 foot-pounds. When torquing the bolts on the case cover, be sure to install them in a crisscross pattern. Next, we can install the power valve lever arm. Reinstall the bolt and torque to 3.6 foot-pounds. Remember to use a pin to hold the lever in place while you torque the bolt. Next, we can install the power valve cover with gasket. First, I like to take a little bit of grease to help keep our gasket in place. Install the power valve cover and make sure that this rubber gasket gets a nice seal on the engine's case cover. Install the bolts and torque to 3.6 foot-pounds. Now onto the water pump, reinstall your dowel pins. Coat the gasket surface with just a small amount of grease. Install the gasket, line it up with the pins. Install the water pump cover and torque the fasteners to 7.2 foot-pounds. When installing the water pump drain plug, be sure to install a new crush washer. Reinstall the hose. Install a new gasket onto the clutch cover. Install the clutch cover with its new gasket. Torque the fasteners to 7.2 foot-pounds. Next, we can reinstall the foot brake and torque it to 19 foot-pounds. Next, you can install the kickstarter. Install the bolt and torque to 22 foot-pounds. All right, at this point, the only few steps that we have left to do would be to reinstall the head pipe, silencer, number plate, top her off with some engine or transmission oil, fill it up with coolant, and go take it for a ride. Bring it back, double check your fluid levels, and you should be good to go. And that's really all there is to it when it comes to replacing the seals and rebuilding the water pump. Now, if you have any questions as to what we've done here today, feel free to leave a comment below and we'll be sure to get an answer back to you. And don't forget to check out our website at RockyMountainATVMC.com, where we carry all the parts that you'll need to keep your machine in great shape. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more product spotlights, how-tos, and top 5s. I'm Dustin with Rocky Mountain. Thanks for watching, and keep turning those wrenches.